Okay, now that we hit the record button, welcome everybody to the Pre-Veteran Employment Prep Workshop. Again, it's been a while. We're super excited to kind of speak with you. We know that transition can be very challenging. It can be very stressful. We're going to get really to the root cause of all this, and we're really excited to just kind of move forward in this presentation. So tonight's rules, they're very loose. I recommend kind of sitting back, relaxing. Do focus on the material though, because it's very different than what you're hearing out there from other folks. We really, I think, have done a really good job deconstructing the military transition space in a way that you've probably never heard before. But we'd like to keep things really informal and just kind of fun. We'd like there to be a lot of good knowledge transfer, take away a lot of good information, and then we're going to give you some choices to make, right? Where you can choose one way or the other to begin doing your transition preparations. So call me, Jason, call Aaron, keep it nice and light, make yourself comfortable, have fun, ask questions at any time. You could just kind of pipe in and go, hey, I got a question, which sounds great. And then be sure to stay to the end, because at the end we do have Q&A. We'll answer any question you got. And then we also have a lot of bonus information that I think you're going to enjoy. Okay, so here is the rough agenda of what we're going to do tonight. We might make a couple excursions, but we're going to stay pretty strict and disciplined with this. So the first part is obviously just the welcome. I'm going to tell you a bit more about me, just because I was you. I was just about 9-10 years ago when this was happening, as was Aaron, who was a lot more closer to the boat than I am right now. But we'd want you to take a quiz. We think that's going to be really insightful. And then we're going to break down the space into the two challenges you're facing when it comes to transition. And no joke, it really can be broken down into two challenges. And that's what makes it interesting, is I think we've really simplified it by deconstructing the space so you could think through it in a really clear way. And then we're going to tell you what we do for a solution, which is pre-veteran, which is our programs. And then followed by and finishing up with the Q&A. All right. This is me. So my journey, as in Jason sitting here. So if you kind of follow the timeline left to right, that's pretty much my entire career. And with that career started in 1995 when I graduated from the Air Force Academy. And then I basically did a 20-year career. So I always break up my career in halves. My first half was a lot of flying. My second half was a lot of international work. I really, really loved my career. And then you could kind of see at 2014 was the transition period. So just like everybody else transitioning, you can kind of see me going, oh, right? This is when, and you will know this if you're in transition or approaching it, it's a physiological response your body has. At some point, your brain is going to start thinking about what you need to do to prepare for transition. And it's really important that you kind of get it right. So you're going to be thinking about, it's going to bubble up at some point, and you know you're going to have to address it. So this is one of those things where we know it's going to happen. So it happened to me 2 full years prior to my transition, and there was no program or programming like this to kind of help me through it. Through my own kind of modeling that I created, what I ended up doing is we moved back to Wyoming in 2014, where I then took an entry-level business development job with Rockwell Collins as a remote employee, which is like remote before it was cool and before COVID. And then for some reason, they made me the head of business for Japan, Korea, Taiwan for a $6 billion business. This is germane to this conversation because this is where I received a lot of my business training, business acumen in practical terms when I was in charge of a $250 million profit and loss and a lot of employees. That's where I gained all my business acumen that we talked about. And then after doing that for almost 3 years, rolled back to an individual contributor at a strategy level, at a senior level. And I've been doing that up till last December when I left the company because I want to do pre-veteran full-time. Pre-veteran has been in development for 6 or 7 years, but the programming has been around for 2 years. So I'll pass it over to Aaron for his story.
Yeah, hey, mine is quite a bit shorter, but if y'all didn't already get the introduction, I am Aaron. I was a 2012 Naval Academy graduate. I went off to flight school after the academy and had a great time flying the P-8 Poseidon, which is a maritime surveillance aircraft. So a lot of fun times in Asia, kind of in the South China Sea and Korea and that whole area. So really enjoyed that. That picture there with the guy with the samurai sword, that's out in Okinawa. If you guys have ever been out there. So good times out there. And then I got out in 2022 at my first exit ramp at the 10-year mark. Had a good career, but as you see on the very left side there, 4 young kids and a big family. And I just wanted to be home more and be able to set roots out here in Texas, where my wife is from. So we decided to get out, and I knew I didn't want to go to the airlines, and I wanted to pivot careers into something where I'd be home every night, which was a major move for me. And honestly, it seemed a little crazy because my whole background and experience was in aviation. So I was trying to navigate that, and how Jason kind of showed that graphic with the guy pulling his hair out. That was kind of my moment there, figuring out how am I going to do this. And it turns out I was in one of the first cohorts of pre-veteran when the program had just started, and that really helped me figure out how I was going to navigate that career transition, how I was going to find the job. And so I ended up doing that, pivoting into commercial real estate and doing that for kind of the last year. And now I'm at pre-veteran full-time as the first full-time employee. And I really love the mission that we have here. And I love working with folks transitioning out, helping them kind of find what's next for them and find a good path to do that. And so just a little more about that journey into the private industry. I was actually able to get a role that I was arguably, less than qualified for based on what I kind of learned in the course. And on top of that, I was able to negotiate an additional salary. When I got my initial job offer, I was able to negotiate an extra $12,500 on my salary and benefits package, which was a big deal because of how competitive the space was and the kind of newness of that job to me. So that's all kind of to say that a little bit shorter story than Jason here, but I really had a smooth transition going from the military to the private sector because of my experience with pre-veterans. So hopefully you guys get something out of this and kind of consider what we're going to tell you here tonight, just with an open mind, and start thinking about what's next.
Okay, so now this is when we kind of go to the interactive part of the brief here. So what we're going to do is have you take a quiz. It takes literally less than a minute to do. But what we end up doing is we talk about the responses in real time after this. So Aaron is going to go ahead. He just put in the chat window right there. It is the employment readiness quiz. It'll take you to our website. You put in the information there, and we're literally going to talk about the results aggregated with the others that have taken it. And we've had about 280 plus take it already. So go to the link. Let us know in the chat window if you have problems, but I'm going to put on my handy iPhone here. I'm going to put in 90 seconds and I'm going to hit start now. So go ahead and just, I'll be quiet for a moment and take the quiz. Okay, that's about halfway through the time. So if you just jumped on, we're just taking a quick quiz right now. The quiz link is in the chat section. All right, coming up on 10 seconds. Let me do a refresher here. Let's see. Alrighty then. Okay, outstanding. Okay, so as you've taken the quiz, we're going to now go into what the results look like, and we think you're going to find that very interesting. So let me get back to my window. All right. Okay, on to the next slide. Okay, what does the data show here? So it's really important for us to be a data-driven company. And like I mentioned, I'm going to pull this into the window now. So here, like we mentioned, we're going to pull in your results along with all the others that were there previously. So again, we have about 290 results, which is not insignificant. But let's talk about who we're talking about with pre-veteran who's taking our quiz. So you can see that a vast majority are active duty or reserve. Others are married, or most are married with kids. And this seems pretty obvious and significant because you're likely coming to us because you likely know intuitively or otherwise that the transition program that's existing may not meet all your needs. So the other part is if you have family obligations, you can't just go sleep on someone's couch when transition comes around. You really got to plan it out, and you're looking for other options. And that's why when we talk to our students, that's pretty much the situation they found themselves in. So here's the question: how confident are you that you understand the differences between the military and the private sector? And you could see somewhat confident or not confident at all represents a large majority of somewhere between 75% or so. That is a large majority. Take a moment and think about your post-military employment success. Can you see a clear path forward from where you are now to having a successful outcome? The majority says no by about 14 points. Next, which of the following thoughts have entered your mind as you talk about and prepare for post-military employment? Should I do something different? Very high margin. Do I need to get another degree to be competitive? Do I need to get my PMP? Do I need to get my Six Sigma? Should I start my own business? Is there anybody in the chat that wants to kind of share, yes, that's pretty much what I've been thinking, or no, that is way off? Go ahead and throw it in there if you like. And then, of course, what is the space telling you out there? So as part of your plan for successful transition, which of these activities are you doing now or plan to do later? Build a network, find a mentor, do informational interviews. If you are, yeah, so Matt's in there, yeah, pretty much what I've been thinking about and been told. Exactly. So this is a process that's playing out in your mind, and this is actually influencing your decision-making, which we'll get to here in a moment. So when you talk about these things, these are really important to discuss because this is what you're hearing out there, and this is influencing what you're thinking and the decisions you're making. So here's what's interesting about these two, right? So here's what I'm told to do: build a network, find a mentor, do informational interviews by a large margin. The next question is really telling about the whole space. Assuming that you do find that mentor, build a network, participate in informational interviews, do you know what questions to ask? I mean, it seems like the obvious next question. And you can see the sort of or not really is a huge margin at like 85%. So what this means to us on a data standpoint is you're being kind of led down the path of what to do, but you don't know the next series of questions to ask about. So this is where the system really begins to fall apart. And again, this is our diagnosis and our deconstruction of the system. We'll get into more later, but how confident are you that your approach is currently going to yield success? And this hurts us because as a veteran in this community, and as you're going to be there soon, you could see that a majority, right, between 50%, 20%, and 10%, which is 40, 51, 58% give themselves a flip of a coin or less chance of success. And this is really sad to us because you are very capable, very strong. You are very educated, driven, yet you give yourself this low probability. So this is really what our core mission is in pre-veteran, is to turn that around and make sure that you're hitting the ground running, making sure that you're competent going into your post-military employment preparation, and making sure you land on your feet and be very successful. Yep. And Eric, appreciate that comment. So literally right now, I want to hear comments. So if you want to talk to us or you could chat, right? There are only two challenges you're facing when it comes to military transition. Now, we're going to deconstruct these, but these are the two prime challenges you face. The first is the environment, right? The environment that you're getting ready to go into now, not the private sector environment, but the actual transition environment we're talking about. So the transition environment itself is actually, it is very complex, multifaceted, right? And we'll talk very specifically about what those points are later on in the brief. But the first challenge you must face is the fact that the environment is very complex and has a lot of moving parts. The next is actually how your processing and decision-making is within that environment, because that decision-making is going to determine the outcomes of what you're doing and determine if they're productive or counterproductive to your success. So when we're talking about that, again, it's breaking it down into thinking and making good decisions. So Eric says right here, yep, there's so much to think about when working through that transition. Absolutely, but let's bring it to the forefront and actually talk about it in specific terms. And I think you're going to find out as you go through this brief, no one has broken it down in the terms we have. And that's really important because we want to get to the detail. And that's a lot of what we've done over the past 6 months. So here's the bottom line, and this one might sting a little bit, right? But it's just true, right? You're getting ready to leave the military and you have significant gaps and misalignments with what the private sector wants and what they're expecting, right? So is anybody kind of balk at that idea and go, Jason, Aaron, I think you're a little bit off the mark there? Or do you think that that might be accurate, actually, if you look at it in a really sober fashion? Anybody?
Can you say it again, Jason, just to reiterate?
Yeah, so I'm just saying, if anybody, so Krista says it's absolutely accurate. So again, we're not trying to presuppose anything. We want to get a discussion. And if you think we're off, please let us know. But doing a lot of deconstruction of this environment, does anybody kind of object to saying, hey, I know intuitively or otherwise that I've got gaps and misalignments, right? So good, we got accurate. So we want to tell you why that's happening very specifically. So let's kind of go into that. So here's that first challenge that we talk about, and this is the environment, right? And like we said, the transition environment, in our opinion, has been set up to set you up for failure, and here's why. So here's TAP, right? There's a lot of people who criticize TAP. Actually, Pre-Veteran does not take that stance because truly, after being in the private sector for 9-10 years, there's no other organization on the planet that has to deal with moving so many people from one system to another in that volume. You know, in any given year, it's usually 160,000 to 200,000 service member leaving the military to go into typically the private sector. And if you add in the fact that most 50%, in fact, are married, and then 50% in that range have kids, you're talking about a whole lot of people well beyond the 160,000. So it's a significant problem. So we're not here to badmouth TAP. We are here to kind of talk very specifically about the model that's been created as a result of how TAP has been executed. And what this is going to feel like, and you're probably feeling it now, is you do your military service, 4 years or 40 years, you're kind of getting to the end here. And in this narrow window, you're supposed to do some level of development, right? Some level of help to help yourself out to get out into the private sector. But when you zoom in on that, this is what it looks like. So you do your week-long transition assistance program. And then what no one tells you is your workload triples immediately. So your 1X, let's talk about that. You got to do your normal duty, your day job, you do training, deployments, but then on top of that, you got family obligations, right? And the family obligation piece is really important because at that time, most people have younger kids, which are typically more time intensive. It's a relationship stress right out of the gate. But then the 2X part of that is administratively kind of separating yourself from the military. So this is medical, dental appointments. Excuse me. So this is medical and dental appointments. And if you multiply that by the number of people in your family, it really begins to take that 12 months and really narrows it down significantly. But then on top of that, what ends up happening is the third piece, which is arguably the most unfamiliar, but equally the most important, because this is what sets you up for post-military success. The 3X is, who am I? What do I want to do? What industry, what company, what role, what level? So this is what's really unfamiliar. And this is frankly what we think is missing in the Department of Labor piece of TAP, where you need to do this and figure out who you are, what you want to do, so you can really zero in your energies and efforts to that particular industry, company, role, and level. So from a behavior standpoint, and you guys can tell me if this is accurate or not, what you end up doing is kind of falling back on SkillBridge, or maybe an MBA, or maybe get an advanced degree or something like that. And they're actually calling this in the transition space now extended transition, which kind of implies you just kind of bleed into the post-military world, right? So yeah, Eric says, yep, I got a SkillBridge lined up, right? Now, I'm not here to badmouth SkillBridge either. I'm saying this is really the system that's underway right now, right? So anybody else in the chat or a conversation want to kind of say, hey, this seems very accurate, or you're missing something? Okay, so hey, So let's get into more detail because details matter. This is your life. This is your success. This is your post-military way you're going to be doing things. So let's zero in on the 2X and 3X. So I think it was, who was it in the chat here? So we talked about, let's see here, individual development is hard. So we're talking about Eric. So when you talk about individual development and you're talking about being really busy, let's put a fine point on that. So it's not just about getting a job, right? There's more to it. So let's do some line items here. So here's your transition, that red vertical bar that you got right there. That's your date. Everybody's got their own date. Here's the deal. Employment. You got to do several things in order to make sure that you're set up for that post-military success, right? And guess what? That's going to translate to dollars that are going to go into your pocket. And what's really significant about the employment piece of it, it's not just a bonus, but it's also a salary. So if you don't maximize that, that's going to be a net detractor from you. And it's also recurring, right? So it's really one of these things that you want to make sure you get right. So the employment line item, making sure you get a job, making sure you're not unemployed, making sure you're not underemployed, making sure you're being compensated properly is simply one line item. That's it. And what you need to do in order to make sure your transition is success. But the other thing here, VA claim, right? So you can see there's milestones here, but they're on different timelines, right? So when we talk about different timelines, what's really complex about the military transition space, if you deconstruct it, is you're doing several actions that are critical to your success. And you got to do them in parallel while you're doing your job, while you're doing your family obligations and everything else. And that also translates to dollars. So you got to get it right to be optimized. You know what I mean?
Well, and some people, Jason, might even be asking, like, I need to do a VA claim. Like that might be news to them. So yeah, I mean.
Yep, it is. And even Matt says in the chat, totally overwhelming, right? So you got to kind of take a step back and go, this is the system I've got, right? This is the system I'm supposed to flourish in. Are you kidding me? Right? So we talk about insurance, right? We've got an insurance specialist on here, Sarah, right? She's a partner of ours. And she can tell you there's a lot of things you got to do in order as well as part of the line item to making sure that you're set up, making sure you're choosing your right life insurance as you go on, because this is dollar savings. And then obviously making sure you're taking care of your family should something happen to you, right? You always want to make sure you're taking care of your loved ones behind you. And then finally, being financially ready, right? So there's milestones there, and that's going to have an impact to your dollars as well. So what we've really done, I think, well, is deconstructed to say, hey, it's not just getting a job. It's actually lots of preparation with different line items that have different really significant milestone events that are at different timelines. And it would be completely impossible to try to keep on top of this as a person trying to do it by yourself, all while trying to continue with your job and keeping your spouse happy, right? So this becomes a very impossible situation here.
And by the way, I mean, you can really quantify each one of those line items. I mean, when you look at employment, whether you're looking at careers that are, you know, a salary of $50,000 or $150,000, if you don't know how to negotiate salaries, you could be leaving 20% of that salary in addition to that salary on the table because you don't know how to negotiate a salary. With the VA claim, you're talking about a couple $100 a month or $4,000 a month or more. And that is for the rest of your life every month. And so that's a really big deal. Insurance, same thing, a lot of money on the table with that. Financial preparation, you need to know what's coming. And if you're not ready and don't have savings, you could really put yourself in debt. So these dollar signs really do have a major impact on what that's going to look like immediately as you leave the military.
Exactly. And Matt kind of hit it on the head here when he goes complete overwhelm, right? Now we'll get to the point where it becomes a gap, right? Because you're going to miss something in here undoubtedly, unless you find the right system or model. So what really happens is this then flows into the second challenge with how are you as an individual going to process this information and then make sure that you're making the proper decisions to make sure all bases are covered and you're optimized now for transition. Because I hadn't told you before, but we're a cognitive neuroscience based company, which means we actually hired a cognitive neuroscientist we actually developed our own models, and we're very keen on understanding how human beings think, because the way you think drives your behaviors, your decision-making, and then ultimately that dictates your outcomes. So we're really keen on that. It's really important. So let me tell you where the challenges reside, right? So here you go. Every one of us, right? We've done this for 2 years now. This is not a PowerPoint brief. This is actually a program, and we have real data behind this, but we want to get your perspective on this just because it's kind of fun. Now, we got to have a little fun, kind of poking fun at ourselves, but to be truthful, we all are approaching the transition from an ignorant hubris standpoint, right? Now, when I say that, it's actually a really good descriptor of how we are, because we don't know anything about transition, but then we kind of think we know. That's kind of the big higher level bumper sticker. But what we're actually referring to is a cognitive neuroscience based principle that says your brain actually leverages or recalls long-term memory to use to think through current challenges. So your current challenge right now, one of them is transition, right? With all those different parts we just talked about. So the fact that you haven't transitioned out of the military before means you have no long-term memory to recall, which means that there's gaps there. So here's what all the research says, right? Is people coming out of the military once they've left said, I couldn't see a clear path forward. This is very frustrating to military people because we're type A. Typically, we're very used to being able to execute complex missions in very complex terrain and landscapes. But in this case, we can't individually think through where we are now to the end state, which is why it's so high in those survey results we talked about. What you don't know is that your brain then, sensing the gap, goes to try to fill it. So guess what it fills it with? Here you go. You probably knew this was coming, right? Here you go. All the stuff people are telling you out there in social media. Should I do something different? Polls at about 25%. Do I need to get my PMP? Do I need to get my Six Sigma? Do I need to use my GI Bill to get an MBA? Do I need to land that skill bridge? And this fills your mind, supposedly filling those gaps. But in reality, what our students really teach us or tell us is that this becomes a lot of noise that complicates decision-making, because your brain entices you to go down each one of these line items or each one of these areas and investigate it a bit. And then when you find you get to a roadblock, it actually increases stress. And then you become a little bit more anxious because you're finding out that these aren't necessarily the answers that you need to become successful. Anybody, does that sound about right on the ignorance piece? Anybody have a comment on that? I can relate. Eric, I appreciate you, man. I mean, you know, not everyone is going to be completely honest with you.
Hey, I'll raise my hand because I was the guy who went and got my PMP because it was free, and I didn't use that thing. I didn't know why I was getting it or what I was going to do with it, but I was sure going to get it, and I did.
There you go. Yeah, totally. You and a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So where the ignorance piece and the brain gap, we call it, is problematic. The hubris is actually way worse, right? So because you've been in the military either 4 or 40 years, and that's very specific training in the military that's very different than the private sector, your brain will leverage or try to pull that long-term memory into a thinking process to address the private sector. The problem is the environments are so different. These aren't really good, and these become significant misalignments. So here you go. I can figure this out on my own. This is a complete military mindset heuristic. I remember thinking this going, I'm smart. I've been in hard situations. I can figure this out too, right? Now, this becomes problematic because we just explained a couple slides ago that you're doing multiple processes all at once in parallel that have different milestones at different times that you got to do. Totally impossible, right? So you're going to miss some. Next, the private sector wants a generalist. I got to get opinion on this, right? So whether you're in the Air Force, Army, whatever, you got a primary and secondary AFSC, which means you got a career field. However, in the military, you do whatever the military needs you to do. So from a brain science standpoint, what that means is you've done so many iterations in your mind of doing different things that you will approach the private sector as the private sector needs a generalist. They need someone who can do everything, a leader, right? The private sector does not need that. What they need is a very credentialed specialist to fill a very specific part of the profit and loss, and that's defined as a role and a level in a job, which is what job boards do. So anybody there have the generalist mindset besides me? I mean, I was like, I'm a leader, hire me, just give me a chance. Anybody else like that?
Oh yeah, the servant leader things, right? I mean, that's just like in your brain.
It is. You could hear it all the time if you're going to LinkedIn to look for stuff, right? I've just been hoping that's enough. So, Krista, the good news is we have answers to all this, right? We're really just spelling out the problem right now. We just think we've done a nice job deconstructing this because we want you to understand that it's important for us to think on your behalf in this situation and then help you have a choice. And we're going to give you your choices here in a minute. So thinking you don't need to change is very veteran-esque, right? You're like, I'm good, I'm smart, I'm educated, I'll be fine. But I'll tell you, the stats don't support that, right? I mean, there's a big struggle 2 to 3 years following transition that has been around for 30 years, as long as they've been measuring data. And this is why this is happening, is the ignorant hubris piece. Okay, so what does this mean for you specifically? We want to bring this right down to you, right? Because you're the one that's going through this. It's you and your family. If you have a family, it's you, your family, and your kids, if you got kids. But there's confusion, right? Here you are. I'm not sure which way to go. I'm not sure who I want to be. I'm not sure what career field I want to go to, industry, right? And then naturally, because you don't know, you're putting out effort there, because we talk about the brain gap, PMP, Six Sigma, Skill Bridge, GI Bill, thinking of it all. By definition, you're not hitting the target because you don't know what you want to do, right? So this becomes problematic because if you're not hitting the target, you're not getting the confidence you need, and you're actually decreasing in confidence and increasing stress as you get closer and closer to transition, which means this is the funnest one. You're literally rolling the boulder uphill, right? You are doing things that you don't know are going to yield success. So therefore, you're just doing the effort because you think it's going to get there. There's Stephen. I wasted 5 to 6 years understanding what it is. This is absolutely true, Stephen. And then finally, and we don't love talking about this, but it's just true, you're taking on risk that you don't even know about, right? The risk I'm talking about is unemployment, underemployment, undersalaried, and other items that are out there. Family stress, mental health, relationship stress, stress with your spouse. That was me. I stressed my spouse out something fierce.
By the way, I think it's worth talking about underemployment because I didn't even know what that meant. I mean, when I was going through transition, like, what are you talking about? But it's just to say that you're, taking on opportunities that are less than what you could achieve based on your background, experience, and skills. That the job market has better things for you, and you're just accepting whatever you can get. Go work at some $15 an hour job when really you can get something a lot better.
Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, we're huge proponents of the transitioning military space. We absolutely strongly believe in you, but we also know the gaps and misalignments. So let's talk about that real quick, very specifically. So we told you, and I think we got pretty good buy-in on what the different tasks are. So you have to do multiple things well to get out of the military to be optimized. Here's the problem though. There you go, gap. I missed something in my preparation for employment. Guess what? Boop, I'm losing money, right? Guess what? VA claim. I forgot to do something. I missed it. I was too busy. I was dealing with my kids. I was dealing with my family. I have a relationship issue. I've got a work issue. I missed my VA claim thing. Oh, there goes more money, more opportunity. It's not always money, right? But why is this happening is because the system is not setting you up for success. A lot of people don't even talk about insurance, right? Sarah will be the first one to tell you, she's our insurance specialist, but right, there'll be people, and you'll see it on LinkedIn, right? If you follow Matt Quick on LinkedIn, he's really good about talking about insurance. I didn't even think about it once during my transition. So it was a total gap, right? The fact that I happened to get employment was pure luck, right? And you go from, you may not know, you go from group insurance that's part of service members, group insurance, and then you lose it when you leave the military. You need to find insurance so you can take care of your family. So you either got to find it privately, or you got to go into another employer who has group insurance if it's a medium to large size company, right? So another gap, right? So this is where the gaps are coming from. Financial, oh, more opportunity gone. This picture right here we're trying to paint is very common, right? It's not just employment. It's the whole spectrum of services that we talk about. And we want you to get all of them right. So so those are the gaps, right? So we just talked about there's too much to do. You got to add all of these very complicated movements on top of your normal day job, your training, your deployments, your family obligations. Those are the gaps, right? And we don't want you to miss gaps. So here's the significant misalignments, how you're thinking and the hubris piece, right? So because we are wired the way we are and the way we were trained in the military, we will try to override that common sense with the hubris piece where we go, I can figure it out on my own, right? And your brain will in a very booming voice go, we'll figure it out. The job you need to do is go, well, how am I going to figure it out? And if that next question isn't answered in incredible detail, then it's your hubris talking, and you really need to kind of walk that back, right? You need to know and be self-aware of what your brain is telling you. Private sector wants a generalist. I don't need to change. Things will work out fine. We hear these all the time with people that we interview as potential students, and even within our course that we go through, our employment prep course that you'll hear here in a minute. So does all this kind of make sense? Let's hear Eric's. Now I feel really unprepared. Eric, this is good. I think, Eric, tell us when your date is. You said you already got a skill 30 September. Oh, dude, you're fine. Okay, look, check this out, right? So here's where we get to the choice, and it truly is a choice for you, right? Here are the two roads that you can go into right now. So this is going to be kind of fun, right? But it's also going to be very accurate. And we want to put a little bit of humor in here. So you get to choose between chaos, which I think we spelled out really well there, right? Deconstructing the model that is not set up to optimize you for success or your family for success, or you can pick order, right? Or you can pick another way of doing things. That's a choice. And what's beautiful about this country and what's beautiful about how people and human beings are, actually, you do have a choice, right? So here's the other choice, just to kind of be funny. Who's seen this meme on Facebook or LinkedIn? I pulled this off, right? And this is literally a perfect personification of the mindset heuristic where you're like, I'm going to do all this on my own. I look like I'm going to like die on site there, right? But this is what we do. I remember feeling this way. And guess what?
All these people there, hey, can I help you? No, I got it.
Totally, right? But a lot of times when people try to help you, they just go, hey, go to this resource, look at this link. And this is really not useful. It's actually more noise, right? So we try to pick up the rock because we're strong and we've done hard things before, and this is just a bad idea. Or we could do this, the easier button, right? So I'm going to talk to you about the easier button, which is pre-veteran. Now, we're not going to tell you it's easy and you get to put your feet up on the recliner and grab a beer and just hang out. That is not what this is. There needs to be pretty profound change in your life, but we can absolutely lead that in a system that we've created. So let me explain that to you. So this is our new transition 2.0 model. If you've kind of followed us, or again, we're in the build out of this very deliberate 2.0 model. But this is the easier button where we talk about this longer individual development. Now, when we say longer individual development, what we're talking about is actually getting people 1 to 5 years before they leave. Now, do you have to be 1 to 5 years? No. All we're saying is anytime you're not using before transition well before is opportunity cost, right? It's having you do too much in too short of a period to be effectual out there. So what we do as part of our 2.0 model is we have something called the employment prep course. It's held 3 times a year, except for this year. We're holding it in June of this year and October of this year. It is a 5-week course. The 5-week course, and we'll give you details on that in another slide or two, but this is where you really begin to change the way you think and begin aligning to the private sector's needs and wants, right? The outcome from that course, you start getting on a new trajectory of figuring out who you are, what you want to do, and fill that 3X gap that we talked about, right? There's more though, but this is just the programming for employment preparation, right? So the other piece to that is once you're in the window, right? Like 3 to 4 months out when you can actually negotiate a job offer, we put you into our negotiate the highest possible salary and benefits course. Aaron's already mentioned his was 12.5. The average is 16.5, 16,500. Over the original offer, right? So that's significant using our system that we teach for how to maximize a salary negotiation. Here's the most exciting part though, and this is new, and this is why we did not hold a course in February, is we have now a pre-veteran alumni community. This is absolutely fascinating. Here's why. Once you finish the employment prep course and you're in week 5, we then place you into a community. So the community is no additional charge, right? The community is where you go in and you do additional training. So starting in the June course, you're going to come out certified, what we call pre-veteran basic. And then within the community, which we're not going to show you today, but we can tell you about the capability, you get to be intermediate trained where you increase your business acumen even more, right? And then finally, next year in 2024, we're going to start doing industry recognized credentials, but you can see the idea here is get people prepared way earlier, have them figure out which career, industry, company, role level they want to go into, and then do this additional training well before they ever go into transition. It's just a much smoother way of doing business. Any questions on the 2.0 model? So let me talk a little bit more about the community, right? So the community, again, is once you finish the initial 5-week employment prep course, we put you into the community. So here's what this looks like. All right. I don't know why it's not showing. There we go. Okay, so here's what it looks like. The alumni community, you can kind of see the folks there on the left. This is part of the easier button. With our partners in the alumni community, what we're doing is we address every one of these line items with expertise and partners within the space, right? So guess what? You get to offload this task. Part of the offload is doing the employment prep course that helps alleviate the stress for employment salary negotiation, but then you get to alleviate the others as well. Because look, you can kind of see at the bottom, we want you to have a better relationship, better mental health. And at the end of the day, for God's sakes, enjoy your service. You've done 6 years, 20 years, 30 years. We've had students who sat in front of the admin building crying, weeping at their ID card because they didn't have time to process them leaving the service for the 18-month period prior to them holding onto their ID card going, this is it, right? So this is really sad when the model sets you up to not really allow you to enjoy your last couple of years in the career because the stresses are out of control because you're asked to do too much and you're going to have gaps and misalignments. So the performance coming out of that is just not very good. So here it is. Don't miss a thing. Optimize, optimize, optimize your transition. We have the model to do that. Okay. So let's talk about how we do this. The first step of this process is getting into our employment prep course, right? So here's the highlights on the employment prep course. It's on-demand videos. It starts in June 26th to be precise. It's a Monday, right? And it has weekly live Zoom calls. So there's a knowledge transfer piece via our learning management system. And then we have a live Zoom call so you can meet with the other folks in your cohort. To date, we've had courses about 10 to 15 in people. We anticipate 50 to 60 in this next course, right? One-on-one coaching support. We've got a private LinkedIn group so you can answer or have questions answered that you wouldn't normally do because you're not quite comfortable yet. The other part is weekly assignments, resources, and then here's kind of the curriculum. So the week 1 is tech ready for transition. People love this, right? You are very good at technology. You are not good at the gap pieces. You don't know how to use that technology to get a job. And we are very specific in integrating several key technologies to make sure you can reach out to a subject matter expert, garner information, and then begin building your mosaic or your career picture of what you're going to do. This is what you're going to be doing with tools we provide you and support you with. Next, think differently about your military transition is all the mindset piece, because if we can't break down your mindset, or rather have you break it down, it's going to be hard to learn anything because you're going to fight it the whole time. So we got to disarm that with week 2. And then we start going into week 3, 4, and 5, where we actually teach you what the private sector wants, what it values, how it's organized, how the roles you want to do aid the profit-making enterprise. This is where you begin to fit into the company. The company doesn't need to modify to you. That is not how this works. You are less than 1% of the population. You're moving into the 99%. You need to change, right? So, and then we have a wrap up in that. But you can see again down here, this course is designed to get you really early and get you thinking about what you want to do for a career. Then you go into the community where you get this top off. Okay, this is the course price, right? $497. We are still in pilot pricing. So it is going to go up probably in 2024. This is a very good value, and we'll kind of show you why here in a minute. So for this course, $497. The salary negotiation course, which you can kind of see down here on the bottom right, is the next step. So where this tees you up and then the community continues on, offloads all those different things that you need to do, this is the next course you take. So the salary and benefits course is an on-demand course that's 5 modules, and then we have office hours. So the support system is different, but with the community and everybody you're going to talk to, you're going to really need less support because you're going to be more autonomous, which is what we want. We want autonomy. So you can see course structure, employment prep review if you need it, salary and benefits concepts and how they create salary and benefits packages, because what we teach is actually how they build those so you can then deploy their own tools against them. And it's very effective on how to help you not only get the best salary you can, but maximize all the benefits, the salary, and the bonus, even if it's not posted on the requisition. Okay, $497 for this one too. Again, crazy bargain in any calculation. If you're looking at return on investment, we've got 16.5. So we're doing well beyond that for the average student that's going through here. There it is right here. Student average 16.5 over their initial offer. So if you're a return on investment person, it's a no-brainer, right? So here's the final slide of our presentation before we go into Q&A. So for tonight, up through midnight tomorrow only, right, is these two, or sorry, the top offer is for that. So because you took the time out of your night and away from your family, and I know that you got a lot of obligations going on, we're going to give you 10% off of these courses, right? So here's how the breakdown looks, right? $497 if you want to do the employment prep only. If you want to do both, the bundle is $720 with the discount. This is by far our most popular. And is by far the best value. And again, any calculation of being able to be ready for employment, but then be able to go into the community and begin offloading all these other tasks, again, no brainer, actually very undervalued on the price here, but we're still starting and we want to make sure we get you into the program. Another part to that, actually, before I get into that. So what you're going to do is Aaron just posted the courses piece there. You would go in and select either the employment prep course or the bundle. I'll show you what that looks like here very quickly because we have a few minutes. Here you go. So if you go to the pre-veteran website, you can see courses here. And then as you scroll down, this kind of tells you what we just told you, but you could see halfway down the scroll, you could see enroll in the cohort 23-1 or buy the bundle and save $200. So that's how you do that. Now, another really important piece of this is we believe that transition is a team sport. So really what we're offering is a 2-for-1, right? So if you buy into the program and you want your spouse in there, which we highly recommend, because if you're on the same page, things get a lot better. And he or she would have their own login, and it would be for the same price, 2 people. So it is really a phenomenal kind of offer out there. Again, we want to make transition a team sport, team being your family, because we know having you guys on the same page is really important. So any questions about that? It's got to be a question.
I would just wonder, you know, based on that last conversation and the slide that we showed, kind of all the different aspects that go into transition, all the things that you need to get right, and how when you have those gaps and misalignments, you miss out on so much money really right off the bat. And in some circumstances, that's not something you can really recoup back. It's you either got it right or you didn't. And so I'd just be curious as to the value people think that has. And I know in the military, we get used to a lot of free stuff, free training, free things, per diem, and you just get kind of inundated in that mindset. So I'd just be curious as to what people think the value of having this process laid out before you with a program and a methodology that we know works, if they find that to be very valuable, and how valuable. I would just be curious on feedback. Eric says, are the classes for the employment prep at night? So the classes, it's just the Zoom call, and it's pretty similar to this time that we're doing it right now when we do the weekly Zoom, and it's on Thursdays. Is that right, Jason?
It is, but I think he's asking like the class. So it's the knowledge transfer is via learning management system.
It's on
So
demand whenever you
it's
want.
on demand. You're going to be able to do, but it's also gated is what we call it. So like the first week will open the Friday prior, right? And then you can't get ahead, but the next week's open that Friday. So every Friday, the next week's material, thanks, Eric, opens up. But there is, and it's really important to understand that we do have that live Zoom because we want a connection with the cohort. We want to be able to discuss as you guys go through the course, making sure you're getting that material. Let me, as a matter of fact, that's a great comment. I'm opening this up in another window here, but once you see it, I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. I probably should have done this before. Let's see. I believe it's invaluable. I agree with you. So this is a recording. Let me pull this up. Here we go. This is the trying to remember because we haven't done a webinar in 6 months kind of thing here. So here is exactly what the course looks like. So you can see this is the learning management system right here, and you can see here's the 5 weeks. And like I said, each week is going to be accessible once you actually reach the Friday prior. So we like you to, the feedback has been, hey, students like to study it over the weekend. It's usually the time commitment between 2 to 3 hours a week when you start putting in the work, because the transformation comes from the work you're putting in, right? And then the support we give you. And this is what gives you autonomy as you start moving into this. And then as you move into the community, we just start seeing really good things kind of happen within our students. Let me see.
Krista's kind of asking a question, and I don't know if we had gotten there on the slide, but we do offer a 100% money back guarantee that if you take the course,
Right there.
and if you don't get, maybe I stole Jason's thunder there, but if you don't get what you were wanting out of the course, or you don't think that it added value to you, we will refund all of your money back. So that I hope that kind of addresses your question. And yeah, to find your calling during the time frame of the course. So for me, as a student going through the course, I was honestly looking at 10 different career paths. And our goal out of the course is to have you identify down to the industry, company, role, and level what it is that you actually want to do. And we have a framework to do that called the employment vector method, where you explore all the different opportunities that you're considering. And we have you really, really narrow it down with a high level of specificity. So I don't see a way that you could actually participate in this course and not have it very much narrowed down. I don't know that you're going to get it down to one single option, but looking at things from tech to talk about very, very honest. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because hey, I was looking at engineering jobs, I was looking at stuff in aviation, and I was looking at real estate. So I was all over the place. So yeah, you're not alone. That's very common.
Very common. What you're actually buying into for everybody, not just Kristen on the call, but you're buying into a system that takes care of multi-domainal activity that needs to be done. So I can tell you, having been in the private sector now 10 years, I don't want to do these things. Like there's things that, I can outsource. And this is very common in the private sector, but not common whatsoever in the military sector. So this is one of these big misalignments. So I can tell you, like, I have a daughter going to college right now, and we have just hired a consultant to run through everything she needs to do for college, right? I don't have time for that, right? And I'm kind of arguing that you guys, as you come into pre-veteran and you begin offloading those things, and you can really zero in on employment and kind of begin to outsource the VA claim, outsource the insurance, outsource the finance, it really frees up a lot of bandwidth to do this investigation. Otherwise, you're going to continue doing all these parallel activities and drive yourself insane. And then you're going to have gaps on top of it. So the outcomes aren't going to be great, right? So I really do think that we've really put our thumb on exactly what's going on in transition, and have offered like a really interesting thing at a very, very low entry price to get into that for the output that you're going to get as a result of this program. So
Yeah,
one more thing, Aaron, sorry. So
yeah.
when you do go through the checkout, right, put in employment. And if you have any problems going through this, you can email me or Aaron. Let me see, how well will this fit into completing SkillBridge? We've had many people that are going through SkillBridge that are doing this. Now, again, since we're still new and not super in the consciousness of the space yet, although we're working on it and getting people 1 to 5 years, we have several people that are either going right into SkillBridge or soon going into SkillBridge or are in SkillBridge that are enrolled in this course. So it, again, not ideal, but a way better solution. And we can put you in touch with a few students that just finished it in the fall and have now rolled into SkillBridge and then employment after that. But it helped them select a SkillBridge, actually, that was a better fit for them. Does that answer your question, Eric? Sweet. Okay. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, hey, I love it. We got 3 minutes. How well, that works out great. Sorry for the Q&A being short. As always, I'm willing to spend as much time as you have questions. I will stay here till midnight if need be. Go ahead and hit me up with any question you have for transition, anything you have for our programs or other programs or whatever. We're a total open book, very transparent. We just want to help you guys be successful. And we want to very much empower the transitioning community to go out there and completely kick ass. So any questions, you can put it in the chat or you can come off mute.
Hey, Jason, can you give me screen share for just a moment? I just wanted to show him Cray's email that we got the other day, which was kind of cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so one of my friends actually who went through and took the course, I was just in doing my art project here, crossing out the name of the institution he mentions here. But this is the email he sent us a little while ago because he's undergoing his transition and he was a pre-veteran and went through our course. So he was utilizing a unnamed transition program where they're kind of a headhunter institution that helps place military individuals into different careers. They had a career conference less than a month, but I just left their program. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders because my heart wasn't into it. It became clear to me that I was using them as a safety net. Pre-veteran helped me get the foundation to pursue my career and search on my own terms. And this is totally our goal, just so you guys know. So we want you to have the skills and confidence that you're not waiting for a headhunter or a placement guy to tell you that, hey, I have this opportunity here and I'm going to put it in front of you. And by the way, I'm going to make a commission when I place you into that job. Because they're serving the customer of the business and they may very well care about your well-being, but at the end of the day, their customer is not you. And you need to protect yourself and realize that you need to serve your interests and your family's interests at this point in your career. So I just wanted to put that plug out there and show Cray's email is kind of encouraging to me that what we're doing really does work.
And on that same course thing, we have testimonials from a lot of other students that have been through the program, and we're uploading more by the day. So you can go check that out. But are there any other questions? It looks like Kristen's got one for Aaron.
Yeah, so Texas Vets, I think she's referring to the website, the resource website. Is that correct? Where they help connect you with employers, job fairs, resources, and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. I just have some veteran friends who had mentioned them and that they were a good resource for transitioning and that they have a lot of free services. So I haven't really done a whole lot of research myself.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if you had any insight on them.
Yeah, so I've been on their website and I've used them, and there are some useful things in terms of getting settled in Texas. But it's not going to be the magic bullet. I mean, really, they're going to point you in a direction to another website or resource, which it depends on what exactly you're seeking. But if you're trying to figure out, hey, who am I and what do I want to do, and ask those big questions, I mean, that website is really not going to help you out with any of that stuff. they're just going to have sort of job postings and some Texas specific resources for veterans that are offered.
Okay, that helps a lot. Thanks.
Hey, Krista, what's your timeline, if you don't mind answering?
I'd like to retire in 2025. Summer of
Perfect.
2025. So
So just so we get a lot of early people, you're not definitely super early, but you're early. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you, if you can find an ecosystem that allows you to explore a bunch of different careers and be able to kind of zero in on that, it's just infinitely valuable, is I guess what I'm saying. So, hey, Cindy had a great question. So does the course help navigate remote versus hybrid versus in-person? Yes. What you're going to end up doing is we give you a methodology where you're going to go find all this information yourself, right? So every situation is different, and as kind of like the business on our side and helping individuals, I mean, everyone, we want to be as individual as they are, but the methodology we teach is universally used, industry agnostic, across the board. We've got people going into tech, aerospace, defense, what else? Going into logistics, you kind of name it. It's just kind of doing that. But we really think the benefit is what you're going to end up doing is, guess what? Just like anything else, when it's new, your first iteration of this activity is not going to be your final job, industry, company role. You're going to iterate several times within our ecosystem, and it's going to become almost like with a post-military professional development attribute. So we've had our students tell us, geez, I should have learned this 5 years before my transition, because what you're really teaching us is a completely new way to think. And as you continue on that iterative pathway, it's just going to become what you do. And then it really removes any of the difficulty in getting a job. I'm serious, because you're just going to be acting much more like a private sector person that is much more prepared, has the education, the credential, and you've gone through the exploratory process in a very controlled environment with a lot of great tools that really empower you to do it. Does that help, Cindy? Okay, perfect. Awesome. There we go. So it looks like Texas, or a lot going on in Texas. So hey, again, I'm here to answer questions. If folks want to stay on, please do. Otherwise, I'm going to stop recording right now. Let me hit that.